The time is now for the Dr. Bob Sports Podcast. I am Tanner. I am our head of analytics, and I'm in my 8th year working alongside Bob to originate our NFL and college basketball bets. And today, as always, I am joined by our digital media specialist, Grant. How's it going?
Hey, things are going well, Tan, but my Chiefs almost gave me a heart attack. I was boots on the ground for that game, and we decided to doink in a winner. So I did not love seeing that, but at least we got the win. But it looks like you're back in your office this week.
Yeah, we had a great week down the Cape, but now back in snowy New Hampshire. We got flurries outside right now. It might be the first ski weekend of the year. We'll see.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Hit the slopes and you get a little bit of free time here. But let's jump into our first segment, which is the free bet of the week. And we are 16-9-1 on podcast sites and totals dating back to last year. But where do you want to go with the free bet this week?
We're going to take Denver -4 over Indianapolis.
All right, well, it looks like the Colts might be getting back slot wide receiver Josh Downs and starting center Ryan Kelly.
And we've seen the Colts get bet because these players are coming back. And, you know, Josh Downs does have a favorable matchup on the inside across from Nickelback Jaquan McMillan. But the Colts offensive line is not solved because Braden Smith is likely out with a personal issue, and they're still without right guard Will Freeze as well. And that's going to be a problem this week against a Broncos defense, second in pressure rate, and has the third highest blitz rate in the NFL, which the Colts have struggled mightily against this year. Their yards per attempt against the blitz is a league low 78% of their yards per attempt against a standard pass rush. So I think Anthony Richardson is going to be heated up in the pocket this week. -2 starting offensive linemen. That's going to be a real problem in Denver on Sunday.
Yeah, it sounds like the Colts are going to need to rely on the ground game here, but Denver's defense is conceding only a 36% rush success rate, which is 4th in the NFL.
Yeah, and then on the other side of the ball, Bo Nix is averaging a league high 42% more yards per pass play versus cover 2 compared to other coverages, and he's going to be prolific against this Colts defense with the 6th highest cover 2 rate in the league. And, you know, this game has massive playoff implications, right? It's basically a de facto playoff game for the Colts. Their odds to make the playoffs would drop to 8% with a loss. And so I think everyone's like, oh, it's must win for the Colts. We got to bet the Colts. The Broncos were 5.5 on the open. They get bet down to 4, but we think 5.5 is more like the true price here because we're not really buying into it just being a must win for the Colts, because Denver can basically lock up their playoff chances as well here with the win, going up to about 95% playoffs if they can beat the Colts here. So we would favor the Broncos between 5.5 and 6 here, basically where the market was at open. We disagree with the initial move, and we're going to take the Broncos -4.
Yeah, that's going to be a really good game for this weekend. But let's shift it over to our next segment here. We've got stock up, stock down, and whose stock are you going to be buying this week?
I'm buying the Seahawks offense on Sunday night versus the Packers. So Geno Smith, like we talked about last segment with Bo Nix, has been great against cover 2 this season, and the Packers have the 5th highest cover 2 rate in the league. Seattle's offensive line has improved with Abraham Lucas starting at right tackle, allowing just a 29% pressure rate in the last 4 games compared to surrendering a 35% pressure rate before the bye week. And Green Bay's defense has struggled against screens, 29th in receiving success rate allowed to opposing running backs. We see Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker have a ton of success in the screen game all season. Kenneth Walker might be back this week. He's 9th in yards per route run among running backs. So I think the Seahawks are going to be able to move the ball on Sunday night.
Yeah, and to add to your point, the Packers defense will likely be without starting nickelback Javon Bullard, and this is the wrong game for him to miss, as they will be scrambling on the inside to cover Jackson Smith and Jigba. But all right, whose stock are you going to be selling this week?
I'm selling Kyler Murray. I think he's going to struggle on Sunday against the Patriots defense with the 5th highest blitz rate and the 2nd highest man coverage rate. This Cardinals offense is just not built to beat that kind of defense. The most comparable defense to New England that Murray has faced this season is Washington. They have the 6th highest blitz rate and the 7th highest man coverage rate. And Kyler only averaged 4.2 yards per pass play versus the Commanders. Arizona's yards per attempt against the blitz is just 85% of their yards per attempt against a standard pass rush, 29th relatively. And their yards per attempt against man is only 75% of their yards per attempt against zone coverage, 30th relatively in the league. And, the one thing that Kyler can do against man coverage is get out and scramble. But the Patriots have been great spying opposing quarterbacks and limiting the opposing quarterback's run game. They're only allowing 11.6 rushing yards to opposing quarterbacks per game. That's third in the NFL. So I think the Cardinals are going to have to go to that ground game if they want to have any success in the league. But New England's rush defense ranks sixth according to our numbers.
Yeah, that's a sneaky game. We got to keep our eye on there. But I know we don't have a dedicated segment for this next one, but I got to get your thoughts on the Raven and Giants game. I mean, there's a team favored by more than 15 points for the first time in 3 seasons.
It is crazy, and we believe it's justified. The Giants are switching to Tommy DeVito, who podcast listeners will know we are not a fan of. He is averaging 1.5 yards per pass play fewer than Drew Lock in his career, and DeVito will be behind New York's offensive line, missing its entire starting left side in Andrew Thomas and guard John Runyon. Backup left guard Andrew Stinney is going to struggle across from Ravens interior defender Nnamdi Madubuike, who's 7th in pressures this year. And then edge defender Kyle Van Noy will be back on the field for the Ravens coming out of the bye. He's 18th in pass rushing efficiency, and he's definitely going to wreak havoc across from backup left tackle Joshua Azidu, who surrendered 10 pressures last week, including 6 pressures in under 2.5 seconds.
Yeah, not a good matchup. But while we're talking about the Ravens, let's just roll right into our DraftKings player of the slate. And who are you going to go with this week?
Yeah, I'm going to take Mark Andrews at 4,100 because the Giants are on defense not looking good either from an injury standpoint, just like we're talking about with their offense. They're going to be without starting safety Tyler Nubin, as well as both starting interior defenders Raheem Nunez-Roches and Dexter Lawrence, who ranks 5th in pass rushing efficiency. The Ravens lead the NFL with a 48% heavy personnel rate, and they have a favorable matchup as the Giants are surrendering 42% more yards per pass play versus 2 wide receiver formations than other formations. That's 30th relatively in the league. Baltimore's tight ends have the 5th highest target share in the NFL, and New York's defense is surrendering a league high 0.49 EPA per target to opposing tight ends. So I think Mark Andrews is the guy to go with in your DraftKings lineup. I could be convinced that, Isaiah Likely at 3,600 is also a good play here, but I want to target that matchup for Baltimore's passing game because our model makes them an 18.6 point favorite here. And like we've talked about, they've got some matchup advantages as well.
Yeah, and looking back at the Ravens, they are also not scared to run up the score on teams. But let's shift it over to the injury watch here. And Derek Carr fell over 2 players, landed on his head in last week's game versus the Giants. So Carr fractured his left non-throwing hand and sustained his 3rd concussion in the last 2 years. So it's looking like Jake Haener will be the starting QB for the Saints, but it could be Spencer Rattler.
And either guy is going to be going against Washington's defense with the 7th highest man coverage rate in the NFL, getting a huge upgrade on Sunday with man specialist Marshawn Lattimore set to make his first start for the Commanders after being traded from New Orleans last month. So he gets to go against his old team here. Now, Lattimore is conceding just 0.32 yards per cover snap. He's having a great year for the Saints before he got traded, and he's going to replace either Mikey Sanderstill or Benjamin St-Juste, who are both allowing more than 1 yard per cover snap. So Lattimore improves the Commanders' defense by 0.8 points by our metrics.
Yeah, that's a big upgrade there. But Justin Herbert suffered 2 injuries in last Sunday night's game, and it looked like an ankle and a leg contusion, but he did continue to play through the pain, but he had a noticeable limp. So do you think he's all good to be the starter this week?
I do. I don't expect as much scrambling from Justin Herbert, but he should have protection in the pocket this week. Yaya Diaby is the greatest threat from a pressure standpoint for that Tampa Bay defensive line, but he's going to be lined up mostly across from left tackle Rashawn Slater, who ranks 13th in pass blocking efficiency.
All right, well, on the other side of the ball, Buccaneers all-pro safety Antoine Winfield has a knee sprain, so that's going to keep him out for a few weeks, and the Bucs are down to Christian Eisen and Kayvon Merriweather at safety with Jordan Whitehead and safety Mike Edwards out.
Yeah, and it's a good matchup for Herbert throwing the ball because he's been relatively better against zone coverage than man this season, and Tampa Bay's defense has the 2nd highest zone coverage rate in the league. And Herbert might be getting back his top target, wide receiver Ladd McConkey, who's 7th in EPA per target this season.
All right, well, looking at the Bills, their linebacker, Matt Milano, suffered that knee injury in week 5 of last season. That kept him out until this month. But how has he been impacting that defense?
Well, I mean, he's been not a full-time player so far as they kind of work him into the lineup, but I think he's been getting more and more snaps, and I think he'll be a full-time player for the Bills come the playoffs. He ranked 6th in coverage grade by PFF and had 2 interceptions last season before that knee injury. The season prior to that, he was first-team All-Pro due to his coverage ability, and I think his coverage ability is going to make a major impact this week on early downs when he's on the field, because Jared Goff has a league high 1,534 passing yards targeting in breaking routes. And he likes to hit those on play action on early downs, but you're not going to be able to do that as much with Matt Milano taking those routes away. Now, the Bills are already 5th in receiving success rate allowed to opposing running backs, and Milano only helps that. And so I think the Bills are going to be able to shut down those screens to Jahmyr Gibbs, who's 4th in yards per route run among running backs.
All right, well, looking at New York's defense, they are getting back starting cornerback Sauce Gardner, and he should be able to limit Jacksonville's wide receiver Brian Thomas, who saw a 40% target share against the Titans. But Christian Kirk and Gabe Davis out makes this a whole different offense, basically. I mean, this is going to revolve around Brian Thomas.
Right, and with Sauce Gardner back for the Jets, you can take Brian Thomas away. That leaves pretty much Evan Ingram as the only guy Mac Jones can go to. Sauce Gardner is allowing only 0.9 yards per cover snap, which is much better than backup Brandon Echols, who's running 1.23 yards per cover snap this year. And then just schematically, it's not a good matchup for the Jaguars passing game either, as their yards per pass play is only 76% against cover 1 compared to other coverages. That's 30th relatively in the league. And New York's defense is the 5th highest cover 1 rate in the NFL.
Well, Aaron Rodgers threw for 300 yards last week for the first time since December of 2021, but New York was officially eliminated from the postseason for the 14th straight year.
Yeah. And I mean, I think Rodgers has another favorable matchup this week to play well. They just find new ways to lose games. The Jets do. That favorable matchup is because the Jaguars do not blitz, which has given the Jets offensive lines problems this season. They've been much better against a standard pass rush with Aaron Rodgers.
Well, Miami lost left tackle Teron Armstead against the Jets, and it doesn't look like he's going to be able to suit up on Sunday, which is pretty massive for this Dolphins offense.
Right. I mean, Armstead is 5th in pass blocking efficiency, and it'll be backup Patrick Paul across from Will Anderson, who is 7th in sacks this season. So you think, okay, Tua's going to want to negate that pass rush, slow down Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter coming off the edges by throwing screens to Devon Achane, who's 2nd in yards per route run among running backs. But Houston's defense is conceding only a 36% receiving success rate to opposing running backs. That's 3rd in the NFL. And then I think they'll be trying to get Tyreek Hill on crossers, but he's going to be limited by Derek Stingley, who's 4th in yards per cover snap allowed. So it's probably only Jalen Waddle that can have a big game for the Texans this week, because I think Jonnu Smith is going to be shut down as well. The Texans are conceding a league low 35% success rate to opposing tight ends.
All right. Well, let's shift it over to our next segment here. We've got the weather of the week, and what are you seeing out there?
Well, we've got a Browns home game in December, so the weather is looking rough per usual. It's not surprising to me. They're talking about building a dome stadium in Cleveland because it seems like every December late season Browns game is just an absolute mess. And this week we got wind gusts close to 30 miles per hour and rainfall around 1/4 inch.
Jeez, yeah, that's a tough one. Well, Patrick Mahomes was hit 12 times last week, which is tied for his 2nd most in a game in his career, and the hope for improvement at left tackle was crushed as DJ Humphries was shaky in the first half, and then he missed the later portion of the game with a hamstring injury, so not great there. And Mahomes had an average time to throw of 2.6 seconds last game, and that makes it his fastest game since week 2. And he's going to need to continue getting the ball out quickly as he has left tackle Wanya Morris back in there with a nightmare matchup.
Nightmare matchup across from Myles Garrett, who is 3rd in pressures this season. I mean, I feel like they're just going to have to keep Noah Gray on that side of the formation all game and just chip Myles Garrett, because Wanya Morris has no chance. He ranks 5th worst in pass block efficiency and has clearly been the weak link on that Chiefs offense all season. Now, schematically, Mahomes does have a little bit of an advantage here as he tries to fight through the weather and Myles Garrett, because Cleveland's defense has the 7th highest cover 1 rate and the 3rd highest cover 3 rate, and Kansas City's offense is averaging 19% more yards per pass play versus single high safety coverages than 2 high, 3rd relatively in the league. And we've seen this going back years, right? If you're going to play single high against Mahomes, he typically makes you pay. We'll have to see if he can do that on Sunday, fighting the rain and Myles Garrett.
All right, well, looking at Cleveland's offense, tight end David Njoku is in jeopardy of sitting out this game because he got that hamstring injury against the Steelers last week, and Njoku has had 30 targets over his last 2 games.
Yeah, so that's a big blow for Cleveland's offense. I think that's more than a half-point blow if Njoku is not able to suit up, and it would leave Jerry Jeudy as pretty much the only wide receiver left for Cleveland. He's 7th in yards per route run since Jameis took over as the starter, but he will be limited by Trent McDuffie, who I think the Chiefs will just have shadow Jeudy, and McDuffie is 13th in yards per cover snap allowed.
All right, well, let's shift it over to our next segment here. We've got our primetime preview. We got the Minnesota Vikings versus the Chicago Bears, and Sam Darnold had a 12.2 yard average depth of target last week, and he leads the NFL with yards on dropbacks over 2.5 seconds this year.
Yeah, so it's been bombs away for Darnold, and he's been extending in the pocket. We saw some huge downfield plays for him last week, and I think he continued doing much of the same on Monday night versus a Bears defense ranked 31st in yards per play allowed over the past 6 weeks. The Bears have the 4th highest cover 3 rate in the NFL, and Minnesota's offense is averaging 39% more yards per pass play versus cover 3 compared to other coverages. Now, the Bears do have a solid cornerback in Jalen Johnson, 10th in yards per cover snap allowed, but that makes the emergence of Jordan Addison all the more important here, because if you put Jalen Johnson on Justin Jefferson, now you've got to put Tyreek Stevenson, or they pinched Tyreek Stevenson last game. It could be Terrell Smith across from Jordan Addison, who's up to 14th in EPA per target after that huge game last Sunday.
Well, do you think Darnold's going to have enough protection to hit Addison down the field?
Well, there's 2 guys you got to worry about if you are going against the Bears defensive line. Montez Sweat, 16th in pass rushing efficiency. I think he's going to be completely shut down by Brian O'Neill, one of the best right tackles in the NFL. But Gervon Dexter up the middle has a chance to cause some chaos across from center Garrett Bradbury, who surrendered a league-high 29 pressures. And I don't think Darnold's going to be able to combat the collapsing pockets with the screen game to Aaron Jones, who's 8th in yards per route run, because the Bears are 2nd in EPA per target allowed to opposing running backs.
Yeah, when I was looking back, it kind of surprised me to see Caleb Williams average 6.4 yards per pass play in his first game against this Minnesota Vikings blitzing defense. But how did that even happen?
Yeah, I mean, Williams, he's gotten a little bit better against the blitz, but it's not going to work out for him if he hangs onto the ball too long against Brian Flores. I think that the reason he was able to find success late in that game against the Vikings is because Chicago's offense leads the NFL, averaging 15% more yards per pass play versus 2 high shells than single high, and the Vikings have a league high 72% 2 high shell rate. Usually you see offenses get worse as teams put a roof on them and take explosive plays away. But Caleb Williams has done better against those types of coverages, and I think that's how he was able to find success against the Vikings in the first game. Now, our model makes Minnesota a 7.4 point favorite with a predicted total of 43.6. A little bit of matchup edge to the over here, but that's somewhat negated by late season division unders, familiarity taking away. So really not much side or total in this game.
All right, well, let's shift it over to our final segment here. We've got our primetime prop, and you are 22-12, dating back to last year, and it looks like you actually got something for us in the other Monday night game.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Jacoby Myers over 60.5 receiving yards. So the first thing to look at when you're handicapping the Raiders offense is, can the opposing defense take away Brock Bowers? And I believe the Falcons can. They are 5th in EPA per target allowed to opposing tight ends. So it's going to have to be Jacoby Myers if Brock Bowers is out of the game. Myers has been below a 25% target share just once since Devontae Adams was traded from Las Vegas, and he's got a favorable matchup when they line Myers up on the inside across from Falcons nickelback D. Alford, who surrendered 7 catches for 127 yards last week.
All right, well, what's your take on who's going to be under center, though? Because we don't know if it's going to be AOC or Desmond Ridder yet.
We don't. And I think the market thinks that AOC is about a point better than Desmond Ridder, but I don't even know if it's that much. I mean, O'Connell has a career negative 0.05 EPA per play compared to Ritter's negative 0.07 EPA per play, but Ridder edges O'Connell in success rate 45% to 43%. I mean, the reason Ritter's EPA per play is a little bit lower is because he takes untimely sacks and has so many fumbles in his career. But I mean, I don't know that we can expect him to fumble at that extremely high rate going forward. So I kind of feel like Ridder, a little bit more mobility than O'Connell, is basically the same and should be able to get Jakobi Meyers the ball. And I'll be taking Jakobi Meyers over 16.5 receiving yards on Monday night.
Yeah, I love that pick. Well, I think that will do it for this week's episode. If you're looking for more content, head over to drbobsports.com. We'll also find our college basketball service, and our best bets are 117, 96, and 1 for 55%, and the opinions are 103, 71, and 1.
Yeah, solid year, but I'm calling it out now, Grant. This is the luck turnaround spot for college basketball. We've lost 5 bets on games decided by overtime, so underdogs and unders that would have won in regulation had it not gone to overtime. And we've won no bets in the other direction, winning a favorite or over due to overtime. And best bets are just 12, 22, and 1 on games decided by 3 points or less. So we need that college basketball luck to turn around. If you're feeling lucky, sign up for the college basketball package. We are going to turn the luck around. We're going to start winning close ones going forward.
Yes, we will. We need that boat to get turned around, but we've got a good record there. So everything's all good, but we'll be back next Friday to preview week 16 of the NFL, and good luck in your fantasy football playoffs.